Of all the types of video games the medium has to offer, none might be harder to sell to the average player than the rhythm game. There was a time when it was a lot easier, when Dance Dance Revolution could be found in any arcade, and plastic peripherals from Guitar Hero or Rock Band didn't just collect dust. But show a fan-favorite game to an every person, and it's a much more difficult ask. It looks too daunting with its complex note charts, too involved with its array of gameplay gimmicks. Efforts have certainly been made to make rhythm games more approachable. Some titles offer a series of unique minigames that provide a potpourri of playstyles. Unfortunately, that's a double-edged sword. Make one that stands out above the others, or don't provide enough variation with each one, and the peaks will lead to deeper valleys than intended. Other games have integrated a story mode, letting more conventional elements of the medium allow for a more familiar experience. But that too has its drawbacks. It requires the player to both want to improve and keep playing, and to have a connection to the plot at hand. Miss one of these key aspects, and the whole thing falls apart. Instead, I think a good introductory rhythm game needs to be one that stays true to its strengths, while also hiding an X factor, something that would make anyone and everyone want to learn the basics and start working towards perfecting their craft. That secret ingredient ranges from game to game and player to player, but as far as I'm concerned, there's no better place to start for a newcomer than Melody's Escape. The broadest appeal of Melody's Escape comes from its ability to be played with essentially any song you can imagine. It's not the first game to do this by any measure, but it makes up for that by emphasizing the rhythm element more than its competition. The formula works best with an easily discernible 4/4 time signature, but that still means the potential for levels runs the gamut of genre. This is partnered with a gameplay format that is both easily understandable and adaptable to a player's needs. While I'm playing on the intense difficulty that uses both the WASD keys and the arrows, easier modes use only one set. No matter how many hands you're using, you're asked to simply tap and hold to the rhythm. It's Rhythm Game 101 with a soundtrack of the player's choosing. Hard to say no to that. So where does the X Factor come into play? Well, it won't happen at the same time for everyone, but for me, it all goes back to a song I heard on a college radio station about 10 years ago. This is AlunaGeorge, an electro-pop duo that formed in London back in 2010. They released 2 albums, reached international success through collaborations with DJ Snake and Popcan, and have been on hiatus since 2020 to let Aluna and George alike pursue their solo careers. Of relevance here is the 5th and final single from their first album, Body Music, entitled Best Be Believing. Despite a lack of chart success, it did well enough to warrant a trio of remixes. One, seemingly made for dancehall specifically, was done by Simon Neil, alias Shadow Child. The second, a more straightforward approach, was worked on by the band Love Life. The Odd Duck Out, beloved by me and a fellow university DJ alike, was the brainchild of Regan Matthews, better known as Taiko. This remix feels more like a deconstruction, taking various elements of the piece and creating what is in essence an entirely new song out of it. There are certainly recognizable aspects, but it's the biggest deviation of the 3 remixes, transforming the track from a peppy and poppy number into a mishmash of syllables and sound effects. It's not for everyone, as evidenced by its dwindling play count compared to its peers, but it isn't afraid to do something different. And as it happens, Taku's remix makes for a near-perfect level in Melody's Escape. The pace and intensity of the gameplay match the music to a T. The syncopation is smooth and the rhythm is strong enough so that everything feels natural. As you play through the first 80 seconds or so, it's hard to imagine this being anything other than a handcrafted stage. Then all of a sudden... The funny thing about these jumps is that they're not actually beneficial from a gameplay standpoint. I'd argue they're actually the worst part, since it leaves the least amount of time to ascertain what's going on and what button should be pressed next. But if nothing else, it is cinematic. And the first time I saw this happen, I knew Melody's Escape was something special. It's not a perfect implementation, as discussed, and when the second pause happens 15 seconds later, it doesn't hit nearly as hard. But you'll never forget that first instant. And while not every song does it as well as this one, it undoubtedly has and will get more players hooked. But can lightning strike twice?
You run so far, left behind the stones that bruised you black.
You can tell Melody's Escape 2 is a special case by my having played it at all. One of my golden rules is to stay away from early access titles to avoid a sense of boredom or repetition when playing the full release. But the direct sequel to one of my favorite rhythm games had to be an exception, proving the rule. Not too much has changed at a first glance. Sure, the perspective's a different one, but you're pressing the same keys to the same beat, and the formula still works with just about any style you could think of. So why am I still going to bat for the original instead? Well, there are a few reasons. For one, I think the jump from 2 to 3 dimensions hampers the player's ability to tell when to hit the notes a bit too much. Like many of my gripes with games, this might just be my inability to perceive space, but considering I'd never gotten only 3 hearts in the original game, I see something isn't quite right. The other issue is that the X Factor doesn't have nearly the same impact. It tries its level best, but something's just a little off about it. Maybe it's seeing what's in front of you rather than the inkling of trepidation that comes from hurtling into the unknown, or how sometimes Melody doesn't quite segue back into a run upon landing. It's unfair to criticize it too much given that I'm not analyzing the final product, but for now I'd say to stick with the original. Like other examples I've brought up in this video, Melody's Escape does have a few things that keep it from becoming a classic among its contemporaries. Veterans will probably find it too simple. Newcomers might keep the training wheels on for too long. And if you're into weird songs in 11/8, you aren't going to have a fun time trying to play your favorites. Still, it's that flourish, that extra zing that makes it memorable, makes someone say, "I want to do that too," that clinches its place in the genre for me. If nothing else, it's a gateway game, one that will lead to more complex experiences that better reward perfection and fast fingers. Is it worth taking the jump? You'd best be believing.